Okay.
Good evening, Facebook family and friends, YouTube family and friends. I am Sheba. I am your happy bug. And tonight is one of those special nights. We came to have a conversation. I think it's kind of a well needed conversation because the situation itself kind of have created a lot of these issues for women. We tend to question ourselves in situations, trying to figure out why things are the way they are. And it's just unfortunate. I think people do it as a whole, but particularly women, because we always try to figure out why. So WAP, as we know, is this whole called WAP special. I mean, this WAP thing. And we know what it technically stands for, but we've recreated what it means by our definition, myself and Miss Kim, because we're coming to talk to you tonight about why women are not the problem, because that's come seems to be one of the things we once again we do ask ourselves. So there's a big controversy going on because Cardi B and her husband are separated, and behind the WAP song that she has, it's being said that maybe she didn't have good pussy, because that's what WAP stands for, wet ass pussy, that maybe she was the issue. And me and Miss Kim come to argue um, against that, against what is being said in the media. So since Kim is our guest, I'm gonna let her break the ice with us, and we'll just kind of have a conversation. So thank you very much for joining us, Facebook family and friends, and YouTube family and friends. And Miss Kim, I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you the floor.
Yes. So I'm on social media, and I saw a lot of people posting about this situation, and it is a sad situation. Anytime two people who have come to be in love with each other, and they go into marriage and they end it in the marriage, it is a sad situation that we shouldn't take lightly, because we go through things and we don't go through it in the public. Okay, this is still they're human beings. Okay, let's not, I don't want to like negate from the fact that we're talking about a situation, but a serious situation. But I do want to say this, and this is the thing that you and I were talking about, is so many times, and in a lot of the posts, it geared towards her. you know
Hmm.
um, she didn't have it, or she put in one of her lyrics, she didn't cook or she didn't clean, but she still got the ring, and they attacking her on her lyrics.
Hmm.
And so everything is towards her. But my observation, as a woman, is that we can't take on all of that, especially when we're talking about a grown man. You know what I mean? We're not talking about a little boy. We're talking about a man that has his own, mind. He obviously he doesn't have a whole lot of self-control, but this is a grown person, and a grown man, and in relationships, and when I talk to other young ladies, it's always, oh, I feel bad, I feel embarrassed. Why are you feeling bad about some a behavior of a grown person, someone else? The only thing that you need to feel embarrassed about if you do something, not because
Hmm.
they do something.
Correct.
We gotta stop that. We take on the whole, we gotta do everything. We gotta be in control of the man. We gotta be in control of ourselves. We gotta be in control of the kids. We gotta be in control of everything. Ladies, that's not you have no control over that. You have no control over the behavior of a man. You can cook, you can clean, you can wop, swap, and everything else. And if he doesn't have enough self control, he's going to go out there and do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I want to have this conversation. I'm tired of this. I'm so, I talked to another young lady. She was saying, oh, she feels so bad that he's doing. Why? Why? That's him. That's not you. We can't take on that. And then we feel bad about ourselves and, low self-esteem and all these other things, high blood pressure, just taking on all of this weight that doesn't belong to us. So that's, pretty much the way I see it.
Right. I think a lot of the problems that we have in this type of situation, especially as women, is because we have been given a norm. And we have been given a what you don't need, and this is the way things should be. And I think people use the term should, and they don't realize how many expectations that they're setting upon others, needing them to be what they, by right or by their thoughts, think that is necessary for people to be human beings, or for women to be women, and even down to the brothers, for men to be men. We've set this norm by our environment, and not realize that a lot of it is probably not attainable. Absolutely. There are less people able to focus on the situation or the moment, which happens a lot in our marriages. And when you see so many marriages fail, we've developed our own ideology of why.
Right.
And that's what people are feeling insecure about when it one day becomes them.
Right.
So I think that's what really happens. Like when I was going through my divorce, I sat in the courtroom, and the man asked me a question, and it actually really brought me to tears in the moment. Mm-hmm. He said, "Are there any children?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Another statistic." Mm. And it was heart-wrenching, but I don't know what he meant. Mm-hmm. But I could have taken that 100 different ways. Like, was he calling it my failure? Mm-hmm. What was he calling it? Was it my ex-husband's failure? Mm-hmm. Who did that belong to? Was it me? Like, it makes you question a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because a lot of us aren't really sound with ourselves.
Right.
So then other people begin to answer those questions for us. Mm-hmm. Answer those whys. And I think a lot of women get caught up in that being the issue, but they're not really thinking outside of the moment. Mm-mm. A lot of us go through marriages and communication being the worst part, but truthfully, a lot of us go through life with communication being our worst part. Like, it's the worst. It's no assets behind it. Right. And because we don't put anything behind becoming better at it, it just kind of dwindles in every portion of our lives. It just trickles down. And then marriages fold, and then now we're asking questions as to why, but no one ever asked the question as to how can I fix me? Like, what do I need to do for self?
Right.
And then, like Cardi B, I'm not really sure exactly what's happening so much in the news, but it's a really sad situation, because now, like, I wonder how long she went through the situation before just said enough.
It was enough.
Out of fear of what people would say about her.
Right. How much
you know what I mean?
That's exactly right. But you know what? Let's just go back to the dating. This is the part that really people miss a lot. Okay. Mm-hmm. The behavior in the dating. So the behavior in the dating is not marriage material. Okay. So then, if you don't marry me, then that's the end of it, or whatever the case may be. Oh, I'm gonna marry her because she's a good woman, but I'm not gonna, hey, I'm gonna do me. I'm still gonna do me. So we get married. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now the situations have not been resolved. Mm-hmm. So we get married and we think automatically, poof, everything's supposed to be, roses and, sweet tea and, just cakes and, cupcakes. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, because I expected it to be different. What happened in one day? One day you weren't married, next day you wasn't. So if you guys have not come to some type of agreement, the agreement is that I'm going to do whatever I want to do before I got married. And that's the problem. So they go into a marriage thinking that now that we're married, everything is okay. Okay, that means that you're
Mm-hmm.
okay with me cheating if I'm cheating before, and I'm okay with you not, whatever you don't do, okay, or whatever
Right.
you do. And that's the problem. That whatever he was doing 9 times out of 10, he was doing before and
Right.
overlooked that and got married anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is we plan these lavish weddings, we do all these things, but we don't do anything for pre-marriage.
Mm.
Let's sit down. Let's talk about how things are going to go.
Right.
What are your expectations? What are my expectations? And you got to be honest when you sit down and say that. So if you're saying to me that, hey, I may slip out a few times or whatever, that's up to me to say, you know what, that's not for me. And, good luck. Or, okay, I can deal with that. Or I can deal with it as long as I don't find out about it. But whatever
Mm.
the agreement is, you got to honor that. You got to honor that. The main thing is marriage is supposed to be between two, and you guys you got to communicate.
Right.
It is not easy because biblically it's two becoming one. Okay, but it's hard. It's hard, especially when you're trying to do it and you knew the day before that person really you shouldn't be marrying,
Right.
and then you have these expectations, and then it explodes.
Right. I think a lot of us miss that. I think a lot of us miss it because once again, society has set this norm of the things that you want in your life has to go this way. So I think marriage becomes a rush.
Yep.
Like as for me, marriage became I just want to be married. I got to get married so I can have the rest of my children
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I already had two.
Right.
I wanted more,
Right.
but does it make sense to keep having children not married? That didn't make sense.
Right.
So now I have to marry.
Right.
Where marriage and unions is just like, unfortunately, it's just like being at work. It's a process, it's a team that you're building, and a lot of us don't really understand it. Like even now, in retrospect, if
Mm-hmm.
I had become partly the person that I am now when I first married, I would have been more patient.
And that's so mature. That
Yeah.
is so mature to take ownership of your part of it. And
Hmm.
I could say the same. When I got married, my first marriage, I had a son, and I wanted my son to have a man in his life. That
Hmm.
that man, I chose that man. Okay. But
Hmm.
the second one, I prayed and I asked God. The second one, I prayed and asked God. So now, when things don't go, I can always go to God and say, "Listen, you the one pick this one. Now you got to deal with him before I deal with him." You understand?
Right.
So it's a difference, and like I'm not the woman that I was with the first one. The first one, he got a spoiled brat, 24-year-old who moved out of her mama house into their own house and didn't know anything.
Right.
Okay. And the other one got a 30-year-old woman, you know.
Right.
So it's a difference. I take ownership in
Right.
that. And sometimes you're right. We move too fast. Maybe we are, but we do so many things so backwards. We have children,
Yeah.
and that's a part of it too, a part of the marriage. When we bring in so much into the marriage, and we don't think about it. You
So
got
fast.
children, yeah. When
Mm.
immediately you get married, you got children from one side to the other, and nobody to go to say, "Hey, what do we need to do? How do we need to, make this family become one?"
Right.
And make sure that everybody's, everybody's not going to be happy at the same time, but thinking about them, I'm quite sure he has other baby mamas, and that's an issue, and that's you starting off the marriage with some tough
Some
things,
baggage. Yeah.
some tough things that you have to overcome.
So do you think that, I'm trying to see how to pose this question. Because you said something to me when we spoke about this. And you said, she's not the problem. Like, at what point do you think as women we are the problem? Because we already know that taking care of a man, waiting on him hand and foot might not really be his love language. We know that. We know that might not be what he feels is going to make him feel satisfied, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at what point do we know when we're doing it right? Which is a part of the issue for a lot of women, because you can only go by what you do that you understand and that you know. And I think so many people are afraid of changing for others. And I think that's where a lot of the misconstruing come from. I don't want to change for him. I don't want to change for her. And technically, you're not really changing. You're just kind of bringing out that better part of you for the good of the order, because together you guys create this union. So at what point does a woman say, I could have done that better, or I could have been this, or let me do this to be a better woman? Or how advicely, like, how would you tell a woman that, if that makes sense?
I think that, and I can only use me. I think for me, I fell in love with my God. I fell in love with Jesus. I fell in love. And when I fell in love with him, it was about pleasing him and not pleasing the man. Because one thing I know about men, they're fickle. You know, they're very fickle. One up one day, down the next,
Okay.
So they love you today, they hate you tomorrow. Who knows? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose to please God. And when I know my ways please him, then it's easy to please my husband. Okay. And so I just, anything, whether it's good or bad, no matter what he does. See, this is the thing. No matter what he does, it's not based on the way I act is not based on what he does. The way I act is based on how my love for God. Because it'll be tit for tat, tit for tat, tit for tat. If it's based on how he acts. But it has to be higher than the person that you're looking at, because we're flawed. We make mistakes. We say stuff that we're not supposed to say. We do things that, it might have not been meant for it to hurt you, but it did. Okay. So that's why we have to do it, because it's in us to do it. Not because we have to do it, because it's in us to do it. You want to do it. You want to please your spouse. You want to make them feel good. You want them, but that comes with a maturity too. So it's like, it's a combination of things. If you know he's a hoe, then you have to let him go.
If you can handle
it. Hey, you have to let him go. And if you want to be in a marriage, you have to let him go and let him go through whatever he need to go through. Mm-hmm. If that's what if you want him to just be with you, if you don't want him, messing around with this one and that one, and you're in the midst of all of that, that's chaotic. And you dealing with all these spirits and things like that, that's chaotic. I have seen women go crazy because they can't. It don't have nothing to do with you. There's nothing you can do about it. It has nothing to do with you. That's him and whatever he's dealing with. And if you let him go, he's still gonna do it. So I think a lot of times with us as women, he gonna do it. He gonna treat her better. That's why we don't let go.
You don't want to let her win.
He gonna treat her better. But you know him. It ain't in him to treat her better. So why put yourself through all the heartache when that God has one for you that's gonna treat you good, treat you how you deserve to be treated?
Let me ask you this question. Do you think that marriage, that we get married for our creator? Do you think that we're doing it for a purpose that would make it a godly, that would make unions godly? Or do you think that people are doing what they're doing for self? Because no, not everybody is driven to be faithful to, to their creator.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are living our lives and our minds are in their own places.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person is not connected spiritually, well,
Mm-hmm.
people are spiritual anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but if they're not connected to their source, I guess I'd say, does that mean that they're not marriage material?
Well, the word of God says a sanctified woman sanctifies her home. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that other person has to be, quote unquote, sanctified, because she sanctifies, or he sanctifies his home. But I would say this: if you are in a relationship with Christ or your creator, um, and you go out and you marry someone, okay? This is what I've seen. It ain't gonna be easy because you know better. Now, both of y'all in the world, and then you get saved, that's a different, y'all already union, okay? So that's
Mm-hmm.
different. But it's hard when you are, one's in and the other's out. I've seen some really bad situations where one's in and one out, or one tried to, get the other one to come in, and you know, I've seen that. But I do believe that when we do come into union, and especially with who God has designed for us, I believe that that glorifies him. That glorifies him. I do believe that.
Okay,
Yep.
because the reason why I asked you that is because, I know a lot of times we think as people that what our views are and what our faith stands are
Mm-hmm.
is what's right and proper.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone else, what their view stands are and
Right.
what their faith stands are not. They're different.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that when people bring two different opposites together, it's
Mm,
almost like bringing two negatives together.
right.
It should create a positive. It should create that positive ion so that they're working together. But I think sometimes the negatives are so different,
Mm-hmm.
so it makes it really hard for them to yoke and
Right.
become one. And and like while I know that faithfully and under people's faith stands, it probably would be easier for certain things to be. Um, but I guess that's based on how people would probably look at marriage too. You know what I mean? Or any union for that matter. Because just because a person is two people don't really go and actually get married, once they start bringing children into the situation, it kind of creates that a connection that should
Absolutely.
be stood on and should be respected. So I think sometimes people get caught up in that difference. And
Right.
I think that's why we're always needing an answer as to why.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, and I know this is probably probably a lot bit off topic,
Yeah.
what I'm getting ready to say next, but it's just like I don't understand people when people live a really long time,
Mm-hmm.
and they die, people always say, "Oh my God, she lived such a long life. She could have been wicked as fuck." But we'll never know because we automatically assume because she lived long that it was good. You
Well,
know what
that's
I
based
mean?
on the, that's based on the word of God. I think that's what they're referring to.
That everybody dies, and people
Right.
think that death comes like, oh, how did she live? Oh, did she take care of herself? Why does it always have to be
Mm-hmm.
because of something? I guess that was my point.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has to die. Everybody.
Right.
I don't give a shit who you are,
Right.
how you were born,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of situation you were in. If you were born, you're gonna one day dead. It's just the way it goes.
Absolutely.
So we always put a stigma on it as people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think marriage is much the same. Assuming that because a person got together, that they should always stay together. And I think that's why so many women have such a hard time with the divorces because it always seemed like it was a reason or that it was because of something. And it might not always be. It just might be that moment in your life is just done. And that maybe you could have been the best wife in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily make it any different. My ex-husband tell me right now, if Gary called me right now, he'll say, "Man, I want my wife back." And I always ask him, trying to self-reflect, what could I have done better? What
Mm-hmm.
was wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell him all the shit he did to drive me up the goddamn wall, but I want to know what I did. Tell me what I could have done.
Right.
And I mean, the only thing he has ever told me he didn't like about me was that I reprimand grown people. And I do. I get people when I feel like they're out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm right, but I
Mm-hmm.
just think they stupid or whatever the situation. And I need them to know that. So the reflection is, wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Some people just grow apart and they separate their views has become different. Their hearts have become different. Their love has become something so different. And even the feeling about that person may have just changed. And it just no longer looks or feels the way it once did.
Well, let
So
me
I
ask
think,
you something.
mhm,
Let me ask you this: when you talk about that, don't seasons change?
correct,
So could have just been a season
correct,
if they, knew, had an example or sought someone about it. Could have been a season where within a marriage, because there's seasons like that.
yeah.
It's seasons where you have to remember what was it
You talking about
that
like the
you.
rough patches that we go through in
Oh
marriage?
yeah, there's
Yeah.
seasons like that. Absolutely. But do we just walk away, or we work on it, or you know what do we do? Do we add someone else into the equation? Do we work on ourselves, or
Right,
or do we just walk away? I believe that hey, um, you have seasons.
right,
There are seasons in marriages, and if you just depend on whether you want to work at it,
right.
you know. And then another thing that you said, and I know we're getting ready to get out, but when you was talking about science,
Mm,
um, positive and negatives. Okay, so
right,
we have science, and then you have spirituality. Okay, spirituality dealing with unequally yoked. See, some things aren't supposed to go together, but we try to make them go together. And when you become mature and stuff, you say, "Wow, that wasn't for me. That
right,
wasn't supposed to be, but I chose that in my life."
right,
And so that's why it didn't work. It wasn't supposed to work, because now
right,
I see in my life what was supposed to work.
right. I agree.
So, those two, and I know that, that's the world. Oh, two opposites attract, opposites attract. Okay, well, you're going to go through some things. I hope y'all able to mature. If y'all not going in the same direction, there's going to be some issues.
Right. And there's going to be some bad issues along the way.
There's going to be some bad issues along the way.
Hmm. And
So,
I really appreciate this talk that we're having tonight, because I'm sure there's somebody out there that might be highly affected by these types of situations. As always, we're not on Talk Tuesday, but it's okay because we're on a Thursday special, and it
thank
means
you.
all the more to me, because you just never know where people are
Mhm.
and what situation people are actually dealing with.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens just by chance. It was all by a certain design. So I think that whomever this is for, I hope that we've given you a nugget, or left you with some thoughts that might make you think twice about some of the things that we do when we are in our marriages, and not always to make it a reason why things are happening, and that we're not always, I guess, pointing the blame. Because I think when we start pointing the blame, it always creates that havoc and that issue with people.
Right.
So, and I think that that's kind of one of the really biggest reasons why we're here this evening. But
Hmm.
what's your closing stance?
My closing stance is that when we're on the outside looking in, and you see something like this go on, I think we should pray for people. You
Okay.
know, it's not easy. We quick to say, and then we joke about it. Oh, that's funny. But we're talking about people's lives.
Right.
Divorce is not easy. I tell them, you sure you want to divorce? Because it is something. It's something. It deals with your self-esteem, your mentality, your mental health. Physically, it can, really, it has really hurt people. So even though they were going through hurt in the marriage, so I would say, hey, when people going through and they breaking up, pray for them. Pray for them. Maybe it's, it could, they can get back together, or maybe it was the best thing, but not so much as, talk about it so much. Don't make that the topic of conversation when it's someone's hurting. There's a child involved, there's children involved, and we just have to be mindful of that.
That was very solid. I think people become very derogatory when situations are happening. And I think that the people who become the most derogatory are the people who are suffering with those same issues that did not really know how to deal with them.
Okay.
As people, I think we should stop sometime and think twice before we um, become blasphemous of others, because we never know how they're really dealing with it. We don't know what they really had to go through to actually bring us
Hmm.
in the part of their business that they're actually sharing with you, especially when
Right.
they're already in the public eye. Our goals, hopefully, as women and as people, are to become better. And I'll join in with you, Kim, when I see these types of things, and become more prayerful for people,
Hmm.
and that they find some salvation for the situation, because it's not something that people think twice to do. Like, you know what, she's going through. You know what? Let me pray for her. Because sometimes people really do need that. Sometimes people are so weak in their spirit, so they can't even pray for themselves. And we should know that when we're going through things, because when we're going through things, we're fighting battles that we know we can't handle anyway. But
Right.
we're going to pray. But then we don't pray for others when we see them going through much of the same things that has affected us in our lives.
Right.
So, for Cardi B and her husband, it's not final yet. So hopefully they can work out whatever their differences are. Um, Hopefully anyone else who's going through these same situations,
Hmm.
they can work out whatever their differences are.
Yeah.
And like, even for myself, when I was going to be divorced, I was okay with it, because I was like, I served my time
Mhm.
almost as if it was a sentence, because there were so many things that just didn't make sense. Like, why
Mhm.
must I go through any of this as a person? Why do I have to deal with him and his shit? Why do I have to go through this shit with people in the goddamn family? I don't want to go through this shit. It was a, you know, it was a heavy load, and we separated, and it was a heavy pain. My heart was very heavily broken. It was like, dang, I said I was done, but was this really the right thing? But at that point, you've gone so far, you've hurt so long till you can't even see clear light of day at all, like at all. So then you stop loving the person, and then it's all over, because love is the one that drives you back together.
Right.
And it's not so much that I stopped loving him, I just stopped loving him enough to be the wife that was going to deal with some more of his bullshit. So it just made it easier to walk away. It was easier to let it go. And on that day, on the divorce day, it was kind of heavy, because now, just like the judge said, I had become a statistic, and my children had become a statistic. And I feel bad for those people who were driven to this point when their marriages were so toxic that they had to fight to stay through it. So, those are the ones that should be letting go, but they stay too long, and then they get more abused, and abuse become like the whole forefront of their whole lives. And that this is like a really, we probably should have had enough, probably should do another one on what, the whole views of marriage and how people get through, because this just not always easy. And this is a probably well needed topic, especially for our people of culture, because I think the struggles are even stronger for us,
Mhm.
um in things, because I think we've become so used to losing.
Mhm.
So divorce just seems to be the right next thing to do.
Mhm.
So it has been amazing. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming
Yeah.
here. I'm sure a lot of women that would stop by this post, this would do them such needed good.
I
And
hope so. It's not
hopefully,
you.
yeah, it's not you. It's not you at all. So hopefully we can meet here again, me and you, Kim, to have
Okay.
another topic of such much the same,
Yeah.
maybe more so geared toward marriages and
And marriage material.
yeah, marriage material, because a lot of us miss that. We see red flags, and we just don't want to
We
pay
just
attention to
ignore
it.
'em. We just ignore 'em.
Yeah,
We just
we say, oh
ignore
my
'em.
God, he's so
But
handsome.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's go to
So
bed.
yes, let's take care of the next thing.
Yeah, you
So
all, you know,
yeah.
take it
So
over.
we'll be here again on Tuesday, called Talk Tuesday, every Tuesday night. So if we missed you tonight, we'll see you then. Thank you very much, Facebook family and Facebook friends. Y'all have a